Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 114 of the Reformed Gamers, the show all about theology, video games, fighting Colossi to save some girl in a white dress. I'm your wander host, Logan.
And I'm his co-host, Adam.
Adam, let's just not beat around the bush, man. Shadow of the Colossus is one of the greatest games of all time.
Some people say that.
I would say that, especially after getting the platinum trophy for it. Like, oh my goodness.
I mean,
my goodness.
I thought it was good. Would I put it in my top 10? No. But
wow.
That's that's okay. That's just is what it is. But there's a lot of things that you can still talk about it, even if I don't think it's like one of my top 10 games. You know how many games I've played in my life? How many games you've played in your life?
I mean, I've played a lot. You've played a whole lot of Call of Duty and Madden, so I don't know what your top 10 looks like.
Even still, top 10's tough to come by. Maybe we'll do an episode. I think we may have done one in the past of our top 10 games, or top 5 at least. But
did we?
Again, I'm not saying it's a bad game. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Sure.
But I don't think I'd put it in my top 10.
Fair enough.
But I didn't play the remaster either, so there's that. I played the PS3 remaster, which
there's your problem.
Wasn't much of a remaster as is.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. Anyway, dear listeners, if you couldn't tell by now, we are going to be talking about Shadow of the Colossus this episode. But before we get any further, let's do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. Thank you to those who have filled out our survey for the podcast, giving us feedback and things like that. A lot of great feedback for that there. We're going to officially shut off the feedback thing there for at this episode here. So when you're listening to this, we're no longer taking feedback, and we're going to go ahead and pick out a winner of the $10 gift card next episode, but we'll still reach out to the person via email and get that taken care of. So you won't have to wait until the next episode to actually get the gift card. You feel what I'm saying? I think you do. I think everyone's tracking with me. And then, like we said last episode, we are in the process of getting that feedback and making changes based off of that feedback. And some of the things we heard loud and clear last episode with specifically, we're looking at the data, which Google Forms is amazing. We're looking at the data, and we see that kind of the top segments for our episodes are what have we been playing, what have we been reading, and the topic. So from what you guys have given us in terms of feedback, those are the three biggest spots of the show that you guys love, that you guys crave, that you guys want more and more of. And so we're going to make changes according to that. And one of those things is we will be bringing back what have we been reading, which it kind of went into the Reco section last episode, and now it's back. So we'll have that section there. But because we are doing that, we're going to put an axe into the news and new releases section. Now that's not to say that we won't talk about a news topic as a topic, later on down the road. But we're trying to make this commitment of keeping the shows under an hour long, or right around an hour or so, or maybe even a little bit over. And yeah, we just can't fit everything into an hour. We can try, but I can't guarantee that it will be something worth listening to at that point. It might not be quite as pleasant with that there. And then, of course, with the dear patrons, we'll be doing our monthly game giveaway next episode as well. But that's probably something we'll just reach out to people in the meantime. Adam, am I missing anything?
That's the big thing. We're trying to... Again, it could, the next couple episodes could just be different. So I'd say bear with us, be gracious. We're not going to change the show. We're taking all of the input. We want to sift through what we think is helpful, what we can change. We don't want it to be a brand new show because there's something that got us here. And so changing all of what we have done to get us here isn't helpful. But we're starting to plan ahead and try to see what it looks like to get more hosts. I know that's something that was asked for, so we don't want to just rush that. We want to schedule that out and be bring the right people on for the right episodes.
Right.
And so we're going to try to schedule those out a little bit more in advance so that the timing is right. We're going to try to, as we'll do, as you'll find out in this episode, we want to try to engage, even in the main topics, more of the dear listeners and some from the Facebook group. So, we know we're talking about Shadow of the Colossus. We're going to start asking for questions in regards to this game or to whatever game or topic we're talking about, just to get more interactive conversation going on between us and the listeners. So we're trying. We're not going to be perfect at it right away, but just know that we're working at trying to do what we can to continue to improve and do as best as we can.
Yeah. And as always, keep giving us that feedback, because if you don't give us feedback, then we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. And if that frustrates you, you're just going to stay frustrated. And then it's like, we don't know what we're doing. So, it's kind of like, I don't have a good analogy for that, but you get the idea. Anyway, dear listeners, thanks again for the support and the feedback that you have given already. But without further ado, Adam, good sir, let's just jump right into it. Hello and welcome to the Reformed Gamers. We like to start off the show like we always do with a little bit of what we've been reading. No, what we've been playing and what we've been reading. And Adam, you handsome bearded man, how's it going? What have you been playing?
Dude, life is good. We're on Easter break. So
True.
Students are gone. A lot of the students are gone. So I've got Friday off, Monday off. When you work at a Christian college, they give you that extra day off for Monday just so you can go to your home church. I appreciate that. So it's a good time to be alive. I'm blessed with a great little daughter, a great wife. So super thankful, excited. In the next coming months, I'm gonna share some more family news with the TRG community. But I want it to be a little bit more solidified. So there's a little teaser for Sutherland update coming up, maybe in 2 episodes. 2 episodes.
Oh man,
I think I can share some exciting stuff.
Adam built a house.
I wish. No, I'm an apartment dweller probably my whole life. I may never own a house, and that's
dude, you're gonna Ryan Gosling a house just like you did in The Notebook. I believe in you.
Maybe. But anyways, back to what I've been playing. Dear listeners, I did it. I finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Didn't know if it would ever happen. I never finished the first one.
Really? I thought you did.
I got to a point in the game where I was going to have to grind for I don't even know how many hours because I was pretty underleveled. And it just wasn't worth it. And so I ended up going through and just watching the YouTube to just get to finish the story. But this one, I was going through and I never really hit a point where I had to grind. So I was trying to sprinkle in more side quests, really not just rush through the main story, kill different main beasts, do some of the different hunts and stuff that I need to do to develop my characters more. Now, there's a lot I still didn't do. One of the people in the Facebook group asked the question, if I collected all of the blades. I definitely did not, because if you know me, I am not a collectible guy.
True.
But I unlocked a lot of different blades, and I had a good combo. A great thing about this game is, once you figure out the combat, once you figure out your play style and your party, the game, there's a lot of ways to beat different bosses or enemies. You find out their weaknesses. And so, by the time I was fighting the last boss, I don't know, I was probably 4 or 5 levels under. But because I had a good party and I knew how all my characters work, a big part of this game is these elemental orbs. That's how you kind of get your chain attacks going. So once you figure out, that was the biggest thing for me. Once I've got that point down, the last 4 bosses were pretty easy compared to any of the bosses. I had more trouble in the middle bosses and stuff of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 than the final boss of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Now, I wouldn't say that this game is easy per se. There were a couple people here and there that gave me problems.
Yeah, I remember a few giving me a hard time.
Super, I'm gonna say I'm thankful that this game wasn't a crazy grind. Somebody else was asking me, was the grind worth it? I would say compared to other Xenoblade games, this game doesn't have the grind quite like other ones. As long as you do some of the side quests. So hopefully in the next week or so, I'm going to try to write a review for the website.
Okay.
When I think about all of the things that I would need to talk about, it's kind of overwhelming because of the systems, the combat, the
there's a lot to it.
characters, the different ways that you can develop different things, whether that's mercenary groups. I mean, there's just a lot of things to talk about. So I'll probably write a review, but it won't be extremely in depth. It'll be a relatively general story overview. I'll definitely talk about some of the different gameplay things that I really like, but I'm glad I finished it in the end. Like, I have that sense of accomplishment. The last 3 chapters, excuse me.
Old man Adam.
I'm still getting over this sickness, man. The last 3 chapters, like, sometimes games drag. This game closes really well. It doesn't drag. I think the last 3 chapters are easily the shortest of the game, and the last 2 in particular are like, they're like an hour and a half each, maybe 2 hours. So really, I really like the way they close it, because I know for myself, when I'm finishing a game, like, once the end is in sight, I just want to get to it, and this game allows you to do that. So that's one thing I really, really liked about it. So finished that up. Also started up a game, I'm not going to talk about it, but A Way Out. It's the co-op game by EA. I'll talk about it more next episode. Just want to touch base on that. But the other game I want to talk about briefly is I started up a game called Nier Automata.
Nice.
Logan, you've played some of this, correct?
I just recently got back into it last week, I think. Got a couple hours into it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I can't decide.
That's where I'm at.
I'm probably 3 or 4 hours into it.
Okay, and same as me.
I like it enough where I keep playing it, but I'm like, do I want to keep playing it? But I keep playing it. I think the combat is unique, and it's interesting.
The combat's great.
It reminds me a lot of, and this may not be the best analogy, but Metal Gear Solid, the original, how the angles kept changing up on you, like from the different camera angles, and sometimes you might be over this shoulder, sometimes over this one. This game, you're kind of constantly changing the gameplay and the fighting style, so it might be over top in your ship, or side-scrolling, or just over the shoulder. So it's interesting, but the story hasn't really sucked me in yet. And so
it's kind of, how do you say this in a nice way? Weird, I guess. Yeah. Confusing, convoluted, one of the two. It takes a while to get going, is what I'm saying. And
so I'm gonna keep trying out. It may be a game that I just kind of dabble in here or there. But I'm not gonna give up on it yet. But I'm also like, again, we talk about it a lot on the show. We only have so much time. If a game doesn't grip me, I'm not going to keep playing it. So I'm gonna keep playing it. Once I get back from Easter break, we're gonna be heading up to Michigan this weekend. Once I get back, I'm gonna keep trying it out. It's a game I got from the library, so if I don't like it, I don't lose anything, so I can just return it. But I do want to give it its fair spin. So, but again, something keeps drawing me back. I think it looks good. I think the combat is fun. I'm trying to figure out again what's going on with these robots and humans, and what's going on in the world, this post-apocalyptic type scenery that we got going on. But I can see why a lot of people liked it. There's no doubt about that. There are a lot of things about it that are clean and crisp. I just don't know if it's a game that's meant for Adam.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that stood out to me when I was playing it. It's just the way that it handles like all these different genres really well. Like, it handles being a shoot 'em up really well. It handles being a third person action combo hack and slash kind of game really well. It's just same with me. Like, it's enough weirdness to keep me intrigued and going, okay, I'm gonna figure out what's going on here. I want to at least beat the game. I want to do at least that much.
Yeah, I would hope to say that I would get there. I think it's like only like a 17 to 20 hour game if you go basically main story.
But did you got to get like multiple endings, right? I think there's like 4 or 5 different endings.
I won't be doing that at all. I'll beat it and then I'll go watch them on YouTube.
Okay, there you go.
Hey, homie don't got time for that, man.
Fair enough.
Too many games.
Fair enough. Well, since we are, again, adapting to new things, and I keep forgetting this, even though I put it in the notes. I promise I did, dear listeners. One of the things that we have on our Patreon, patreon.com/thereformedgamers, you can support us there if you like the show and like what we do and want to support what we do here at the show. We have a tier, a high-level tier, $25 per month pledge, where they get you Dear VIP status. And what that means is you get to help produce the show. So words are hard. Unfortunately, it doesn't help me with my words. I'm trying, but I'm struggling. This section of What Have You Been Playing has been brought to you by Richard Marroquin from the Jet Islander podcast. Richard, thank you for supporting us at the $25 tier on patreon.com/thereformedgamers. Now, as far as what I've been playing is that Far Cry 5, man. So just a real brief thing. I put this in the Facebook group and I've been talking to people on and off about the game. Here's what I'll say. Here's kind of like my first impressions of this game. Very disturbing. And what I mean by that is the antagonists, the Seed family, the leaders of this cult, are very unsettling, very uncomfortable, in a way that Voss from Far Cry 3 got you there, but these guys kind of crank it up to 11. And I think because it's got that Montana American-looking imagery, it hits a little bit closer to home for me. And so it's got this sense of urgency and danger going on about it, because the bad guys are very menacing, very intimidating. The way that they use the camera angles in this to kind of, because of the first person aspect, you're in their face, very unsettling because they're looking right at the camera the entire time that they're talking to you. And man, it is unsettling and mildly disturbing. It's crazy to see this kind of depiction of a cult and how it operates so up close, because it's just it's unsettling. But that being said, when you're not around these cult leaders and you're just kind of exploring the landscape and stuff, dude, the game is a blast. Like, oh man, the way that they built the map, they obviously took notes from Breath of the Wild because they don't litter it with anything. The way that you find stuff is by either talking to other civilians or listening to radio broadcasts. And once you do that, it'll place a marker on your map. And then when you go there and discover stuff, it might open up a few more things, but it never feels overwhelming. And I love that they went that route, because we all know Ubisoft games, they tend to litter their maps full of icons and it's overwhelming, but not so in Far Cry 5. But dude, it's a blasty blast. It's a more refined version of the past series and that formula. Last night I was playing with my boy Mitch, and we were just we were flying around. Sorry, dear listeners, but I spent $5 to buy a plane in the game. And we were flying around in this plane, dropping bombs on these like crazed moose. How do you say plural for moose? We were blowing up moose, okay? And like their antics were being had. We found an Optimus Prime 18-wheeler with machine guns on it. We came across this bunker, and I almost got us killed because I flipped a switch and it started blowing up the bunker with us in it. It's crazy fun, dude. It's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying my time with it. But so far, I'm only a handful of hours in, so we'll see if that changes as I keep playing. So you guys will just have to stay tuned to the Facebook group and these episodes, and I will let you know where I'm at. But without further ado, that's what I've been playing, and brought to you by Dear VIP, Gareth Evans. Gareth, thank you for supporting us at the $25 tier on patreon.com/reformgamers. What have you been reading? Makes a comeback after a 1-episode hiatus. Adam, good sir, what have you been reading?
Yeah, the book I've really been diving into, I'm in the Word, I've been in Isaiah, been kind of working through that, and I'm in Psalm 119, which of course is the big psalm. So sorry, I'm going to be coughing a lot. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum. Dear listeners, bear with me. Pray for me. Pray that this sickness leaves my body.
There you go.
It's brutal with a daughter trying not to get her sick. But anyways,
yeah, man.
I've been in the Word in Isaiah. I've been enjoying that, just making my way through the Bible chronologically. But on the side, I've been reading a book for my work. It's Prayer by Tim Keller. I'm about 100 pages into it. And so far, it's been extremely, extremely good. One of the main thoughts that's really stuck out to me is he looks at the purpose kind of prayer, and he looks at Paul and kind of the way that he opens up Philippians, Colossians, Ephesians. And one of the things that he talks about is that Paul prays, one of his main prayers for these people, irregardless of circumstances, is that they might know him better. And so as I've been thinking through that, thinking about, okay, how do I pray for people? How do I pray for them circumstances? Keller later in the book looks at Jesus' prayer in the garden, talking about how he asked for the cup to pass, but he also said in the end, your will, not mine. And so praying for circumstances, praying through circumstances, but irregardless of the circumstances, learning to pray, Lord, help me learn more about you through my circumstances, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. If I'm praying for a friend who's going through a hard time, if I'm praising God with a friend, or whatever circumstances are going on in life, instead of praying, Lord, remove those circumstances, which again, we can do that. We can ask for the cup to pass by us, but also praying, Lord, let your will be done. But regardless, it really just stuck with me of like, how often am I praying that through the circumstances, that whether it's me or a friend or a family member or whoever, that they might come to know the Lord more. Because that's the goal of everything, of our walk with the Lord, of prayer. It's being more intimate with the Lord, knowing him more, and by knowing him more, we can please him more. And so, again, only 100 pages into it, but been a really, really encouraging book so far.
Man, I'll have to pick that up, man. It reminds me of reading that The Power of Prayer book by C.H. Spurgeon I read earlier this year, dude. It's one of those things that, like, you don't think about prayer a whole lot. Like, I mean, we all know we ought to do it, but a lot of times we don't. We tend to not do it. I think if we're honest, we would all admit that. But it's just, dude, it's so integral to our life as a Christian, man. If you ain't doing that, I mean, you can't be surprised when, I mean, at least for me, like, because I've noticed that when I don't pray, my anxiety flares up real bad. And so it's like, if I'm not constantly in prayer, connecting to God, it's just, it ain't gonna be gold. Ain't gonna be gold. What is with me today?
Yeah, we find ourselves falling into the trap of only praying when things are bad.
Exactly.
And things are good. And that's not what prayer is about.
Yeah.
Again, we have a high priest who is, mediating on our behalf. But it's not just there. I mean, a major part of our prayer life should just be an adoration and praise. I mean, but too often we skip over those and we jump right into, okay, Lord, I've got this list of things that I need. And so I'm thankful that the Lord's kind of instilled this in me when I've prayed. It's just, I want to be known as a thankful person. Like, yeah, man. No, doesn't mean that life isn't difficult at times. Doesn't mean that there are times where I'm not happy. But man, I've got to be a person known for Thanksgiving, because everything that I'm given is a gift. I deserve nothing. And so I try to exemplify that in my prayer life to the students that I'm with, my family, whoever I'm praying with, of like, yeah, I'm going to ask the Lord because he tells me to ask, but I'm not going to withhold praise that is due. And so I try to. I'm not perfect at it, but I try to.
Man. It's a good reminder, dude. It's a good reminder. Well, dear listeners, as far as what I've been reading, I've been changing up how I read this year, because I've been known to read multiple books at one time. And what that winds up doing, or what winds up happening when I do that, is I wind up stressing myself out even more, and then I never finish anything in a timely manner. So I'm focusing on one book at a time. And so recently I finished a book called Morning Star. It's the third book in the Red Rising trilogy. Some of our dear listeners are fans of the book along with me, and so you guys know how that is. I'm not going to lie. Pierce Brown is a talented writer. This being his third book he's ever written, dude knocks it out of the park on this one. He uses words like a master swordsman. It's crazy. But one of the things I was thinking about as I was reading through this book, this final chapter in Darrow's fight against the tyrannical Gold Empire, is he comes to this point in the book where he takes everything he's been learning about forgiveness, about compassion, about war, and how if you let it, that can change you into someone that you don't want to be. And he comes to this point where he realizes and appreciates his friendships so much and how they've got him there. He hasn't gotten to where he is on his own. He's gotten there because of the people who have rallied around him and supported him. And man, the entire time that I was sitting there thinking about this and just reading these chapters and thinking about this book, it just made me think of how much our Christian life is. And I know people are like, wait a minute, is this going to be like the book version of TRG? And I mean, that's not what I'm trying to go for, but it's the thing where when you read, you're trying to take every thought captive for Christ. And when I was reading this, I was just thinking about how that's how we ought to be as Christians, sharpening one another, supporting one another, encouraging one another. It's what I've been teaching my students over the past few weeks. And this book showcases that in a lot of ways. It showcases that we need each other. We can't do things on our own. We can't do things in a vacuum because we won't be strong in those moments. We're going to be weak. We're going to fall apart. And that's why we need each other to hold each other accountable, but to also help each other walk, essentially, when we're facing these insurmountable odds, it seems like. And so it's a really cool book. I mean, for the dear listeners that are curious, maybe that are parents, I probably wouldn't let early teens read this book this book's serious because it's basically like the Hunger Games, but for like an older audience. So it's just one of those things that you probably want to screen before you hand to your teenager. But I mean, there's some things in there that I was like, man, this is teaching me a lot on how to be a leader. There's some things I disagree with. There's some things I'm like, that would actually be a good leadership tactic that I won't really get into right now. But so Morning Star by Pierce Brown, fantastic stuff. He just came out with a new book called Iron Gold in the series that I need to pick up now that I finished Morning Star. Finally, it only took me a year and a half to finally finish that book. But so that's what I've been playing, or what I've been reading. That's what we've been playing and reading. But dear listeners, the time has come to talk about Shadow of the Colossus, to journey alongside with us into this cursed land to fight these 16 Colossi and figure out what in the world is going on in this world after this break. So, dear listeners, hang tight and we'll be right back to talk about Shadow of the Colossus. Stay tuned. Welcome back, dear listeners. So again, like I said, in case by now you haven't noticed from the title of the episode, the episode art for this episode, and the whole part in the beginning that we said we were going to talk about Shadow of the Colossus, we're talking about Shadow of the Colossus for this episode. And if you're new to the show, kind of what we do normally with these episodes is we go through the development history of the game. We go through, we give our spoiler-free reviews, and we're doing a new section for this episode here. We're going to answer some of the questions that the dear listeners asked us in the Facebook group. So to start things off, and of course with spoilers, when we get into the actual game itself, and even some of the questions get a little spoilery, we'll give you plenty of time to duck out on those sections there in case you haven't played the game there. If you don't care about spoilers, you can keep listening. But without further ado, let's get into the history of Shadow of the Colossus, this fantastic, fantastic game that is definitely in my top 10. Anyway, with a team of 35 people, Shadow of the Colossus began development in 2002 under the project name, Nico, a portmanteau of Ni, which in Japanese is in, and Eco. So in Eco was intended to be, and the game was originally intended to be a sequel to Eco, which Eco is a game that came out before this game. Shadow of the Colossus is rumored to be a sequel of sorts, and that's actually how it was supposed to be starting off. But Ueda and producer Kenji Kaido held their team to a high standard throughout production of the game. An admitted perfectionist, Ueda felt that only 1 or 2 out of 500 artists who applied to work on Shadow of the Colossus met his criteria and often demanded thorough changes in design until it matched his vision. So the dude, he knew what he was looking for. He knew what he wanted. in his game. And Ueda wished the game to have a unique presentation and change how both players and developers perceived the idea of what bosses should be in video games. To achieve this, he ensured that the game's only enemies would be the 16 Colossi, that they could only be approached one at a time, and that they would have various behavior patterns. Now, fun fact, in Nick Suttner's book on Shadow of the Colossus in the Big Boss book series, he mentions how the game was also originally intended to have around 48 Colossi. 48 giants to do to take down. That's a lot. But then it was eventually later narrowed down to 24 before finally landing on 16 Colossi. Now, the cool thing is, some of these extra Colossi were actually in early builds of the game, and you can actually see them online. You can see what they look like. You can see videos of them and how they moved and stuff. There was one that was like a giant gargoyle thing. There's another one that was a boar. There was a spider. There was a phoenix. I'll put a link in the show notes of what they look like on the Shadow of the Colossus wiki, because they are sick looking. I wish they could have been in the game. They would have been a whole lot of fun to face. Now, though limiting the presence of enemies to only the bosses was partly intended to differentiate the game from others, Ueda also expressed that it was to ensure that the programmer's focus was entirely on the Colossi so that their quality would be as high as possible. In accordance with his focus upon the Colossi and his preference for simple controls, he intended that one button on the game controller be used solely for targeting the Colossi during battles. Ueda cited The Legend of Zelda as an influence on the boss design, referring to the bosses as inverted Zelda dungeons, which totally makes sense after playing the game. Intended to be a realistic representation of a horse, Aggro, which is the name of the horse in the game, will actually occasionally ignore commands. In Ueda's words, a real horse doesn't always obey. It's not like a car or a motorcycle. It won't always turn when you say turn. However, he has admitted that the team had to seek a balance in how often Aggro did not respond to commands so as to not sacrifice playability in the pursuit of realism. Because let's be honest, if we've all played The Witcher 3, that roach horse, totally unusable. You might as well just run around the whole entire forest. All elements of the game, including audio, gameplay, and visuals, were used to achieve an atmosphere of a lonely hero aesthetic, which Ueda considered important in the development of the game. Lighting in particular was used to establish a dark, fearsome setting for the Forbidden Land, while the protagonist's sword would provide a means of navigation that was direct and only expressible visually. Like Eco, Shadow of the Colossus uses a distinct style of lighting, which is further enhanced in the remaster. The game's engine uses elements such as desaturated colors, motion blur, and partial high dynamic range rendering, with a heavy emphasis on bloom lighting, which again, all that stuff looks fantastic in the remaster.
Now, on the PS4 Pro.
Especially on the PS4 Pro, which, by the way, dear listeners, you can go over to our youtube.com/thereformed gamers. We've got 3 episodes up of our playthrough of Shadow of the Colossus on a PS4 Pro of the remaster. It's fantastic. It looks so good. Just go watch it. Now, as far as reception for Shadow of the Colossus, the game received critical acclaim with an average critic score of 91% at Game Rankings, making it the 11th highest rated game of 2005 on the PS2. These include the Japanese magazine Famitsu, who rated the game 37 out of 40, the UK-based Edge, who awarded an 8 out of 10, and Electronic Gaming Monthly, who granted 8.8 out of 10. GameSpot's review gave it an 8.7, commenting that the game's aesthetic presentation is unparalleled by any standard, and IGN held the game as an amazing experience and an absolute must-have title with a rating of 9.7 out of 10. Many reviewers also highlighted the game's soundtrack, with Electronic Gaming Monthly giving the award of Soundtrack of the Year to Shadow of the Colossus. Now, Shadow of the Colossus has received several awards, including recognition for Best Character Design, Best Game Design, Best Visual Arts, and Game of the Year, as well as one of 3 Innovation Awards at the 2006 Game Developers' Choice Awards. At the 2006 DICE Summit, the game won the award for Outstanding Achievement in Art Direction at the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, while it received one of 2 Special Rookie Awards at the Famitsu Awards in 2005. It was nominated for Best Original Music, Best Artistic Graphics, and Best PS2 Game, yet also Most Aggravating Frame Rate in GameSpot's awards for 2005, while it won Best Adventure Game and Best Artistic Game, or Best Artistic Design, in IGN's Best of 2005 awards, who cited Aggro as the best sidekick in the history of video games, which I kind of agree with. 2 years after its release, IGN listed Shadow as the fourth greatest PlayStation 2 game of all time. And fun fact, in 2009, it was announced that there would be a Shadow of the Colossus movie coming out, but we haven't really heard anything since then. So it's probably not going to happen. But Adam, good sir, you've played Shadow of the Colossus, man. Give us your spoiler-free review, man. Give us your hot take on this game.
Now, I think... And this goes back to one of the questions from the Facebook group. Somebody asked if we had played Eco. Eric Bryant said, either of you played Eco? If so, how did it influence and or the prequel of Shadow of the Colossus? And also, I think, so you talk about Shadow of the Colossus somewhat tied to Eco, and I think you can even somewhat attach it to The Last Guardian, because they're both... Shadow of the Colossus is kind of a spiritual successor to Eco. The Last Guardian is kind of a spiritual successor to both of those. Now, I think Shadow is easily the best of the three of those, for sure. Eco is kind of, it's more, I don't want to say it's more story-based, but it's just totally different. Your combat is much more simplified. You're not fighting these big boss battles. It's more platforming, more puzzle making. In this game, yes, there's some puzzle. You have to solve kind of some puzzles of how to defeat the Guardians or the Colossi. But that's about all the puzzle. And sometimes it feels like a puzzle finding them, because you may take you 10 minutes just to find out where they are, depending on how the sword's treating you. But so Shadow is easily the best of those three. Now, I played these again. I played the Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. They did like a 2-for-1 pack on PlayStation 3. So this is probably 2 summers ago, so I'm not going to act like it's super fresh. I've kind of read up on a lot of different things. But I remember my time with it, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was unique. It's probably one of the first games that I've played that was mainly like boss battles, where everything's just epic. There's not really anything in this game that's not on some grand scale. The scenery, the landscapes are grand. The Colossi are grand. The story kind of has this grand narrative of sorts of the hero. I don't want to go into spoilers, so I'm not going to go into more, but everything about the game is kind of on a large spectrum. So I'm glad that they didn't add 42 Colossi, because it probably would have dumbed down some of them.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
As a result, knowing that there was 16, knowing that, every time that you took one out, you felt it. You really did. And that'll go on as we start talking about some of the themes. You're just like the way that they're groaning and suffering and freaking out and flailing, like it doesn't have an overt story per se, but it's there when you're paying attention and really thinking through, why am I doing these things? Like, what's the purpose in this? Is it worth it? All of those questions. It makes for a really good game. It's a really good game. So don't hear me saying, like, because it's not my top 10, that it's a really, really, really good game. And I enjoyed watching you replay some of it, watching some other streamers, and it reminded me of some of that, because it's like, man, this game was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, it really was.
For it to come out on the PS2 and to have all of these scales that I was kind of talking about, the grandness, like it was ahead of its time. Now, if you compare it to some of the games that are out now, it still in many ways holds up, especially the updated version. I mean, it's right up there. It might as well be like it's a brand new game, because that's a big praise to the game, is to say you update the graphics and the controls, keep basically everything else the same, and it still holds up. Like, not, you couldn't do that with every game and it would work so well. I don't think Eco would fare as well today as something like Shadow of the Colossus. And then because I mean, if you look at The Last Guardian, it's very much almost like a mixture of the two in some way. You've got the puzzles again of Eco. Instead of having a horse, you've got the bird dog, which is, I get some people say it's meant to be this way. It's like impossible to kind of control. And so, and it's kind of, you don't have many of those like grand battles that you have in Shadow. So of those three that kind of get bunched together, I mean, Shadow of the Colossus it's a really good game. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. Dear listeners, this is all I really need to say for my review. I got the platinum trophy for this game. There you go. I love the game. It's fantastic. I would even put it in my top 10. Like, the more I think about this game, the more I'm just like, where has this game been? Why have I not been playing this game? It's incredible. And it's kind of like what you were talking about, man. It does this thing with scale in a way that, like, the best word that I can think of to describe this game is epic in the truest sense of that term, man. The moment that you come across your first Colossus, the way that they introduce it, oh man, chills down my spine. I'm like, oh man, we're in it now. This is happening. Man, and just, I think the thing that I love the most about the game, apart from the fact that it really does contribute to the conversation of games as art, is the way that it teaches you how to play the game, the way that it teaches you the mechanics is smart. It makes you feel empowered. It makes you, it just treats you like an adult. It doesn't dumb this stuff down. It's sure that, there's some figuring stuff out, and that's frustrating at first, but man, when you start realizing that each Colossus builds on each other and is teaching you the mechanics of the game and is teaching you different things about the game itself and how it works, it is such smart game design that I'm a huge fan of. And it's no wonder, I've been studying this game a little bit and reading up on it since I've played it in research for this episode. It doesn't surprise me that design schools use this game as an example for different things. It's just, it's amazing, dude. Like, I don't have any other words for it. The game surprised me in so many ways, because I didn't think I was going to like the game, because I heard controls were clunky. I heard it was just a weird game. But after finishing it, I was like, I want to play this again and again and again. Like, I want to go for the extra items. I want to go for, I want to try and get to the top of the tower, which apparently you can do. It just, even playing it, there were so many different ways that the Colossi changed things up, because there was a few Colossi I didn't know had different attacks. And so when they started using those different tactics, I was like, yo, I got to change my strategy up a little bit. And then I learned that you can stand up on aggro. You can do all kinds of different things with aggro. I'm like, dude, it changes how you play the game. And that's the thing that I love about it, is that it has that Breath of the Wild feel where no two playthroughs feel the same. They all feel different. And I'm just saying, it surprised me. It blew me away in a lot of ways, to the point. Again, shout out to Eric Bouchard from Everyday Gamers for loaning me his copy. I sent it back to him and went out and bought a copy, because I'm like, I want to own this game. This game is mind-blowingly good, And again, dear listeners, if you don't have time to play this game, don't be in any rush. But if you've never experienced this game and you're looking for something to play, go get it. I'm gonna throw it out there right now. This is a TRG Reco for me. Go play this game. I can't believe how good it is. So I might be embellishing a little bit. Adam's gonna kind of taper it out and level it out a little bit, because I'm still on that honeymoon phase, so to speak. I'll admit, again, the controls are clunky, and when you do the time attacks, it really highlights the flaws in that game. But man, what an experience. I would love to just forget this game to go back and play it again.
Here's a question. I want to jump in. You mentioned Breath of the Wild. Friend of the show, named McKeever, writes on Facebook.
Yes.
Breath of the Wild's guardian beasts versus the Colossi. Which do you guys prefer? So let's take a minute. Let's just kind of compare and contrast, because they've both kind of got that, again, epic, larger than life feel. Now they're very different. Just, you're not really fighting the beast per se.
Right.
It's a puzzle in Breath of the Wild, but kind of, how do you compare the grandness to them, the difficulty? Like, if you're going to say, I like this model maybe better than the other, how do you kind of approach that question?
It's kind of like with how the games lead designer creator Ueda said it's like an inverted Zelda dungeon. So you got these Colossus, these giant beast machines in Breath of the Wild that are puzzles in and of themselves. And then when you get to the core of it, you figure out the puzzle, you unlock the boss fight where you're actually fighting. And so the Colossi in Shadow of the Colossus are puzzles in and of themselves. And so you're trying to figure out how to navigate them, how to get to the weak spot, and then that's where you get your fight on. And so the Colossi are very similar in that they're puzzles in and of themselves. You're trying to figure out how to get to the sweet spot. And then when you get to the sweet spot, that's a whole other battle of you trying to hang on and not get bucked off of this Colossus. And so you're trying to take it down, but you're also trying to fight it and dodge it and figure things out on how to actually take it down. That it's similar in those aspects. It's not identical in a lot of ways, because the bosses in Breath of the Wild honestly feel like Dark Souls bosses in a lot of ways, but that's how they're similar. I think for me personally, I had way more fun and way more thrilling engagement with the Colossi from Shadow of the Colossus because they're, like I said, surprisingly amazing. So
yeah, I think they're both massive. I mean, major parts of both game, of course. I mean, Shadow of the Colossus, that's all the game is.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to compare, but while there are some similarities there, the way that you go about them is just very different. They are these kind of larger than life fixtures in Breath of the Wild, but once you get inside them, you kind of they don't feel quite as grand once you're inside them always, at least in my opinion. You kind of you can move around them relatively quickly. They've got little puzzles, and then again, not even all of the bosses in the divine beasts in Breath of the Wild were even that grand. Like they were maybe difficult, but they weren't like the one in the and the bird one. That one was kind of larger. Mm-hmm. Some of the other ones were like they weren't necessarily much bigger than Link, and so they didn't have that. Once you're in the big moment, it didn't seem as big compared to the big moments in necessarily of Shadow of the Colossus. So again, kind of easy to compare, but not a ton. The way that they go about functioning isn't always the same, but definitely a question worth kind of raising. So
yeah, man. Well, let me ask you this question then, man. Which one of the Colossus was your favorite? Because Nate McKeever also wants to know, and I'm kind of curious myself.
I think the one that was most memorable, I think it was because it was one I kind of struggled with. Just some of it was probably because of the controls, but it was Colossus 15, one of the last ones, where you're having to maneuver through kind of the building to the right and the debris. You've got the bridge. You kind of have to jump down on top of them.
Oh yeah, that's in the Colosseum area.
Yeah, I think it says I looked it up just to be like Argus is the name of this one.
Yeah, he's one of the third Minotaurs.
Yes. That was one of my most memorable ones. And then, of course, I remember the one out in the desert, the flying kind of snake.
Yeah, that was, Phalanx. I love that one.
That one was a lot of fun.
Oh, so cool.
A good challenge. Some of the more stereotypical ones, I mean, that are more well-known, they're cool because when you see them in the game, you're like, they seem familiar because you've seen them in pictures.
Yeah.
So that's what I enjoyed about the walk, like watching people play the new one. It was like a walk down memory lane. I was like, oh, I remember doing this and doing this and doing this. Like seeing the flying one that kind of, it flies and goes in the water. So trying to time that jump just perfect and hanging on as you're under the water until it comes out and you can kind of make your way up and stab. Yeah, definitely some good. Some of them maybe not always as epic. Some of the smaller ones like the
lion ones.
Yeah, some of those were a little less epic, but definitely some really good boss battles.
Yeah, man. I gotta say, my favorite ones, and I think this is just a theme with me. I loved the flying ones, the ones that you have to climb onto, and you're trying to navigate them. You're trying to find the weak spots while they're flying around the air. Dude, it's such a cool experience. I loved it when I first came across the fourth one, which is the one you fight it in that water area, and you got to shoot the arrow, and then you got to climb on it as it flies at you. Dude, what a cool boss fight, man. I played it on Twitch and was just telling people again and again, like, this is the coolest boss fight I've ever done. This is up there with Psycho Mantis and Metal Gear Solid, the first one. It is so stinking cool. And then when I encountered Phalanx out in the desert, I'm like, this is another cool one. This is thrilling. This is exciting. This is epic. This is so much fun. So definitely my two favorites are the two flying ones, Phalanx and Avion. Is that the other one? It's got some weird names. But I mean, you can't really, you got to at least bring this one up. The first one, Valis, when he first shows up, dude, it's like, yo, let's go. This is exciting. So, but definitely my two favorites are the two flying types, Avion and Phalanx. Such cool stuff. And Nate McKeever, I also agree with you, man. The sound design in the game is just fantastic. Fantastic stuff. I'm trying to think of some other things that we could answer real quick. Aaron Murphy asked, would you want to see another Shadow of the Colossus game, and what would a good and successful follow-up look like to you? I'm just going to say it real quick. No, I wouldn't want to see another Shadow of the Colossus game, because I think this one is good enough that we don't need a second one. So,
yeah,
and I don't even know what a successful follow-up would look like. How they do it
again, we have The Last Guardian, not an exact follow-up for sure. And so, you know, do they relight that fire? Do they try to bring it back? What does that look like? Sometimes the nostalgia carries some of it. And so
I can see
this
that.
game, while for sure the updated graphics with the new one, updated controls, it helps us some. I mean, for you, this was new, so there wasn't a lot of nostalgia. But it would be interesting if they did a completely new one. What would that look like? I don't know. I think sometimes you just let things kind of be, let them stay how they are. I'm okay with them never create one. I don't think they'll ever do it either. I think I don't see, because the Last Guardian kind of bombed, and so I don't expect them to bring back another game in this this trilogy or whatever, or this type of game. So I mean, if they did, I'm sure I'd try it out and play it and hope it would be good, but I don't really see it happening.
Yeah, me either. Let me see some other questions here. That one we can take care of at the end. The graphical upgrades that involve my face are fantastic. Did you get to the top of the tower at all? Did you climb up there, or did you ever have enough stamina to get up there?
I don't remember it, and when I saw that question, I went back and I watched again. Everybody's probably gonna be like, this guy in YouTube. I went to YouTube and watched the video, and it was interesting.
Yeah,
I don't remember making the climb.
Yeah, well, because I got the platinum trophy. One of the trophies is getting to the top of the tower and eating the fruit up there, which we'll kind of talk a little bit about that later on. But yeah, I got up there. I was like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of Garden of Eden vibes up here. Is what I'm getting.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there you go, Nate McKeever. That's what I think about. I think it's got some ties to the Garden of Eden a little bit. I don't know how exactly, but I'm just saying. Looks a little interesting.
Well, we'll get into that in some themes. I think there are some biblical references in this game.
Yeah, man. Well, since we kind of teased a little bit, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Dear listeners, with that being said, if you haven't played the game and you don't want spoilers, this is the part where you pause the episode, you go play the game, enjoy it, get the platinum trophy, and then you come on back and listen to the rest of this episode. So without further ado, once again, you've been warned. Spoilers ahead in 3, 2, 1. It takes place on the moon. I can't believe this entire game took place on the moon. Mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. No, I'm kidding. So again, not to rehash the story, but you guys kind of get the idea that the game follows Wander. He goes into this cursed land with his trusty sidekick horse Agro to bring back to life this girl named Mana, which I guess is his love interest. That's not really clear in the game. And so he journeys into this cursed land. He meets this disembodied voice named Dorman, and is tasked with going to fight these Colossus. And you find out at the end of the game that Dorman's actually been this like evil, malevolent being thing that's been tricking you into freeing himself, because Dorman was separated into 16 pieces into the 16 Colossi. And now that you have freed him at the end of the game, you become Dorman in this pursuit of trying to resurrect your love. And so that's just a brief recap. But man, one of the things that caught me off guard is, or not caught me off guard, but something I noticed while playing the game, is Wander's dedication to saving Mono, even at the risk of his own life, even at the risk of him losing himself. And it kind of made me remind myself of the text that talk about, Matthew 16:26, where it says, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" You know?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Because I was just kind of taken aback at how not nonchalant he kind of was nonchalant about it, but just how you have this disembodied voice telling you, "Hey, go fight these 16 Colossi, and then I might bring this person back from the dead," which, if you kind of listen to the conversations in the game, is clearly against what his village rules are, and yet he just does it anyway. Do the ends justify the means here? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that's kind of something that you have to cope with throughout the whole game. Is you don't know anything about these Colossi other than this guy tells you to go destroy them.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't seem like these Colossi are doing anything to damage the people around them. Doesn't seem like they're causing havoc on nearby towns. There's no inherent evil that's coming from these Colossi. They're just there.
Yeah.
And so for this unknown spirit to just say, "Hey, go and kill them," and again, it's so like they make the gameplay and the stabbing motion, you feel it because you can pull it back, and if you time it right, it goes further in and it hurts them more. If you pull it back further, they do a great job of making you feel almost every stab. You've heard about it in movies and stuff. It's like they say it's easy to pull a trigger because you don't feel it, but when you stab something, you feel it. And like in that game, even through the controller, you feel the stabbings of these monsters. And once you've killed one or two of them, it's only natural to be like, well, like, why am I doing this? Like, yes, I know I want to save my girl, but like you said, at what cost? Is it like, why is it worth it to destroy all of these other things for my own personal gain? Or is there a point in life where we have to not just cut our losses, but like it's not worth destroying more to get back selfishly what I want? And so, I think that there's a good tension when you think about it, and reading up on it a lot more after the fact really raised a lot of these questions of, did it even change anything?
Yeah.
Because this idea, I read an article, maybe we can share it in the show notes just as another reference point for someone to read, because it was a really interesting article on some guy's blog. But it talks about the futility of it, of in the end, he's never really going to achieve what he wants.
Yeah.
He's trying to regain this lost love, and at the, he's killing all these things, he's destroying more life, and then at the end, even though he's kind of resurrected in the form of this boy, the relationship's never going to be the same.
Yeah.
So he's doing all
right
these
back
things
where he started at the beginning
to chase this relationship, but it's never where it was from the beginning. So it's like, was it worth it, or should have kept the good memories, because realistically he loses those memories.
Yeah.
We don't have any reason to believe that, the girl may remember who he is, but he's not the same person. We have no reason to believe that he has those memories still. He's a baby at that point. Mm-hmm. And so, if anything, he loses even more because those memories are even now gone. And he now is causing potentially the girl more pain, because now she's the one living without the love. That she's caring for this baby, but it's not the same. It's not being reciprocated.
So how do you think, I mean, what do you think that has to say about just kind of our own selfish ambitions then, when sometimes our wants kind of supersede or overwrite kind of the good of others essentially? Because I mean, yes, I understand the idea that Wander wanted to bring Mono back, and maybe she was sacrificed in a way that was just kind of unfair. But at the same time, he's practically made her situation even worse now, because at the end of the game, the bridge to that tower collapses. It's gone. She cannot get out of that area, and so now she's trapped in this land with this baby to take care of. I mean, he's kind of left her in a spot where it's like, dude, really? You know?
Yeah, I think
it's kind of a cautionary tale.
How often do we try to figure out things on our own to make things even worse?
Yeah.
You know, we try to fix things, and again, this guy, Wander, had to go. He went into a forbidden land, and he went into a forbidden temple to try to bring back some love that was lost. And so, I mean, we've seen that story in how many different movies where it's like, oh, you're doing all these things, but you know, in this one in particular, it's still a tragedy. There's no like fuzzy moment at the end. The only kind of good thing that comes out of it is Dorman still gets stuck back in the temple.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the only good thing, because everything else, it's like, are we really happy that she's now caring for this baby? You don't really have that moment. And so trying to think of how often where if we would have let things be and trusted how the Lord was working things out. Like, again, we don't know all of the backstory of why the woman was killed. I've heard, you know, I read something talking about how they killed her because they thought that her future destiny was kind of like corrupt and evil. And and so, but for us in our lives, like sometimes we try to go and fix things that we weren't meant to fix. And as a result, we cause more problems. We cause more problems instead of being like, again, even as I was talking about in that book earlier on prayer, instead of saying, Lord, I'm praying for you to intercede. I'm praying for you to work in this. But if not, I trust your will and help me to know you more. And again, we have no reason to believe that Wander would do this. But, you know, for him, wondering, unintentional pun there. Why did these things happen? Why did this love of my life get taken away? And trying to say, okay, what are these, I don't know if you can say gods or ancestors or people, what am I supposed to be learning from this? I'm going to go and I'm going to change it myself. But as a result, he caused more problems. He destroyed everything. He destroyed his memories. He destroyed these Colossi. He destroyed, in some ways, this temple. And he really just, we don't know what afterlife kind of looks like for Mono, the girl that he is in love with. But depending on if she was just non-existent or if anything, he brought her back into a world of nothingness, into a world of suffering, into a world where she is now a caretaker for this child by herself. So it's just some interesting dynamics in play there.
Yeah, because he really didn't gain what he wanted. If anything, he lost it all. He lost everything in trying to. I mean, it just makes me think of this verse here, where I mean, he's kind of the living embodiment of Matthew 16:25, where it says, for whoever who would, I lost it. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You know, he's in a lot of ways you can kind of relate with Wander. You can kind of understand where he's coming from, but it's one of those things where like you relate, but you're like, I don't know if that's exactly where I would go or what I would do, you know, because again, Dorman, and I think he knows who Dorman is. It seemed pretty obvious who he was by the village people when they came in, not like the village people from YMCA, but you know, the village people from the game that came in and were just kind of shocked and surprised and were like, why would you do this? Do you know what you've done? You know, so they know that Dorman is this evil being. And Wander just doesn't care. He's kind of blinded by his own desires, his own wants, his own selfishness. And what's ironic is he winds up becoming the thing that he's been killing the entire game. He winds up becoming a Colossus. And it's just this thing where it's like, why didn't he listen? You know, why did he just ignore all the warning signs? Because even us as a player, when we're playing the game and we're taking down the Colossi, right around the 5th or 6th one, you're like, should I really be doing this? There's something not right about this. There's something off about this. There's something wrong. But he keeps going.
Yeah, you're not really given the option.
Yeah, that's true.
The game
that's
kind
true.
of forces your hand of like, if you want to see, you have to do this. And so it would have been almost interesting if there was, okay, there's always an out.
Yeah.
Like you could always go to this part of the land and not finish it. Again, that would make it for a really short game. But
Sure.
if they added that where you could kill 2-3 Colossus and just be like, this isn't worth it and exit, like how interesting would that be? I think of like when I played Mafia 3, which is a weird segue. But at the end of that game, you have an option. You can drive off into the sunset and the game ends there, or you can return back to New Orleans and kind of run the show. And so you can elongate the game somewhat. And so, but for this game, it's like, what if they would have given you that out? I wonder how many people would have taken it and be like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It would be interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, and just kind of thinking about this in like real life applications, because that's what we do on the show. We like to think and hypothesize and all that jazz. You know, it just kind of makes me think of how when the moment when we start realizing, or we kind of start questioning, like, is this really what we should be doing? Is this like, is what I'm doing right? I mean, the beautiful thing is that for us as Christians, we have the Holy Spirit. And so when that feeling comes around, we can stop. You know, usually we might have to reach out to someone and walk away from it, but we have that opportunity to stop. But Wander never stops. He either remains steadfast, or he gets to a point where Dorman's already taken control of him to where he can't stop at that point. Which kind of gets into the question of who's really controlling who in this game. It's kind of the same question that Inside asked. You know, who's really controlling the character? Is it you or is it Dorman? You know, and I mean, we kind of know it's us because we're the one using the controller. But from the narrative perspective, you know, you kind of wonder at what point is Wander gone, you know, or at what point does he not, I mean, is he even aware that he's losing control of himself? Is he aware of kind of what's going on? I mean, what point does he lose control, you know? Yeah.
I mean, as you play through the game, I didn't notice this as I was playing it, but maybe it was a little bit more pronounced with the newer graphics, but seeing the way that Wander's body and his complexion is changing as he kills more and more Colossi. Again, wondering like how far gone is he? Yeah. And is there any turning back at any point? Because at some point, I mean, you think of, again, looking at the effects of sin in our own life, it's impossible for our sin not to have a toll on us. Yeah. In the same way that the effects of killing these Colossi had an effect on Wander. And he couldn't go back and necessarily even change that. So there are going to be, again, some things in our life to where we may be forgiven, but those consequences never leave us. Yeah. Okay. And so, but even as our sin, like, what are those things in our life that we are allowing to kill us instead of us killing those sins? And what consequences are being, are plaguing our life because of that? And so, not to make too much out of nothing, but I mean, I think there are some correlations there.
Yeah, and that's what I think is so cool about this game is in a lot of ways it's so profound in the way that you can kind of relate in a way that makes you think about your own life, that makes you feel like, this is kind of similar to what I'm going through here. This is similar to what I went through in the past and things like that. And even, I mean, you could even use the Colossi as a metaphor of like overcoming struggles and what that even looks like. Though I don't know if that would actually work considering how the game ends, that you would become your struggle. I don't think that would work now that I think about it. But yeah, dude, it's such a tragedy, man. It's like you're watching a friend or someone like go down this path, and then you see the conclusion of it, and you're just like, oh man, why? Why, dude? Because I mean, we're all pulling for them. Like, we want Mono to come back to life. We want them to be together. But dude, it just ends in such a way that it almost comes across as like a cautionary tale almost. You know, I mean, what do you think the developer was trying to say in this game with how it ends?
Oh,
And that's a heavy question. I mean, you could really go a lot of ways with that.
yeah. I mean, again, there's something to not following. I mean, this is, again, you can approach it from, okay, he heard this God voice, and they may be maybe antagonistic to even Christianity. Don't listen to all these voices that maybe are telling you to go do certain things. There's one way that you could take it that way. There's somewhere it's like the best thing sometimes for you to do is to let go. Like, the best thing for Wander, for him to do would have been to let go of this love that he had just lost. Not necessarily let go of all the memories, but let go of like her being in this world and a part of his life, and clinging on to those memories, but letting her go into and moving on instead of. But as a result of him not doing that, there was even more destruction.
Yeah,
and so. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I have a clear answer to that. What are you thinking?
I mean, the thing that I kept going through, because I played through the game like 4 or 5 times, is just, it's a lot like what you were saying. You know, there's a lot of times we try to hold on to stuff and we try to fight for it and we try to keep it around, and what winds up happening is we wind up hurting ourselves because we hold on to the past for so long. And there's times where like the past has a place, and it's not really wrong necessarily to look back or go back, but there's times where it's like you can't live in the past because you're going to just keep hurting yourself. You're going to keep bringing yourself this kind of pain to the point where it's going to consume you and it's going to transform you. In a lot of ways, sin is a lot like that, because you can't keep focusing on it, because if you keep focusing on sin without ever focusing on Jesus, then you're never really going to kill your sin. You're just going to keep focusing on it and kind of not like complaining, but wondering why has nothing changed? And it's because you're still going after it. You're still focusing on it. You're still bringing that pain upon you. You're still doing things that hurt you, despite all these warnings around you, despite all these signs that if you were to take what it is that you're hearing and bring it back to scripture and ask those questions, then you would see that maybe what you're doing isn't helpful after all. Maybe what you're doing is actually bringing about more harm than good, and the unfortunate thing for Wander is he doesn't find out until it's too late, Oh man, that's making me want to tear up, dude. It's a sad game. Why did I play this game? Super sad. Oh man, way too sad. But yeah, man, did you have any other closing thoughts about this game before we wrap up the show?
No, I mean, I think it's a worthy play, and if you have a PS4, it's more accessible now than it's ever been.
Definitely.
Definitely get around to checking it out.
Yeah, man. Well, dear listeners, that topic was brought to you by Alex Castellanos there on the Patreon over there at patreon.com/thereformedgamers. Let us know what you think about Shadow of the Colossus. Have you played the game? What do you think about the game? Let us know on YouTube in the comments, or Facebook, or really anywhere else that you can post a comment on. Maybe that's Twitter. Now, Adam, before we let you guys go, some recos as usual, brought to you by Dear VIP Eric Bryant. Dear Bryant. There's your name. I'm going to call you Dear Bryant. Dear Bryant, thank you for supporting us at the $25 tier on patreon.com/reformgamers. Adam, good sir, what should our dear listeners check out?
My one reco would be, there's this fun little website called Scott's Cheap Flights. If you are a person that likes to travel like myself, but doesn't always have the money like myself, and sometimes this is let me give a warning. This will be a temptation. Don't do it if you're not good with it. But they send out weekly emails, maybe 2 or 3 times, of just like crazy good flights to different places. There was like a 350 round trip from Chicago to Hawaii. And it's like a newsletter you sign up for. They had $400 round trips from Newark to London. They just have all these, they'll send you like, sometimes they're flash deals. Sometimes they're like, hey, you have 1 to 2 days to buy these. Sometimes they're like, you have less than 24 hours. I haven't been able to do one yet, but it's fun kind of dreaming, and I'm hoping one day to be able to take advantage of it. So I'd say just check it out. Again, Scott's Cheap Flights. You just kind of sign up for their newsletter at their website, and you'll get all the good deals if you like to travel.
And just to be clear, we're not sponsored by them, so I just don't want people thinking like, TRG finally got a sponsorship. So as far as one of my recos is, if you have never played this game and you don't have the money to necessarily play it, one of the other ways that you can experience it besides our YouTube channel that has uploads of it is by picking up Nick Suttner's book Shadow of the Colossus, part of the Boss Fight book series. Even for me, it was cool to go back through and kind of read someone's thoughts about playing this game as they were playing it, and even get the little tidbits about how there was different colossi, about the way to develop the game and things like that. Really cool book, really short read too, pretty cheap as well on Amazon. So go check out the Boss Fight books by Nick Suttner on Shadow of the Colossus. With that being said, dear listeners, episode 114 is coming to a close. But as always, if you'd like to contact us, head over to Twitter at TRG Podcast on Twitter, twitter.com/TRG Podcast. The link will be in the show notes. Join the Facebook group, join in on the discussion. As always, if you like what we do here on the show, head over to patreon.com/reformgamers to consider supporting us, helping us grow on the show, and get early access to all of our episodes. Get entered into our monthly game giveaway, and depending on the tier that you support us at, get our patron exclusive show, The Loot Box, a little 15-minute episode on a random assorted topic. And then of course you can also join our TRG Discord through there as well. Just check it out, patreon.com/reformgamers. You'll see all the different tiers on there. And as always, head over to the website, thereformgamers.wordpress.com. I just posted my review for Don Maku Unlimited 3, a sweet little shoot 'em up on the Nintendo Switch, which actually the developer found the review and retweeted me. I'm like, whoa, this is legit. So we'll have some reviews going up in the coming weeks over on the website. But anyway, dear listeners, thanks again for checking out this episode of The Reformed Gamers. And until next time, GG and amen.